It's about being prepared to fight. I had no issue being able to go and fight if I needed to fight for my country.
Paul Boone, Knightdale, North Carolina.
I'm Philip Landphair, and I'm from Kernersville, North Carolina.
Well, my name is Daryl Davis. Grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Family farmed in Welcome, North Carolina, that we worked all the time.
Life was pretty simple. It was pretty fun. It was a small town, so there wasn't a whole lot to do but hang out with friends. It was my mom and my stepdad for most of my life, and then my brother came along when I was in high school.
Growing up, my parents, well, my dad is, Jason's my cousin on my dad's side. And we would have lots of family gatherings every other year at the very least, and sometimes every year. But my grandpa owned a farm, pretty large farm out in Iowa, which is where most of my family is from.
I've told my wife many times it's probably one of the greatest things I've ever been involved in, as difficult as it was in the beginning. And so I look at that school right now and I see, holy mackerel, when I see the numbers of what's happening and the successes that's taking place. I wish I'd have had it around when I was going to school. I could have used that.
I really like the standards of this school, not just academic standards, but I just think there's a bit of a military mentality here, just a bit of it, and just in that we're trying to do things to a higher standard than a normal school or a traditional school would be, across the board.
Well, I had knew I was going to get drafted, and so they had a lottery. Unfortunately, during that time, it was a tough time for a lot of young men, because if you changed schools or either you weren't in college, you were rated at a much higher rate to be drafted.
After high school, I spent a good year just taking college classes and trying to figure out where I was going to go and what I was going to do, but I was kind of just spinning wheels and doing things just to do it, working, taking classes, but with no real point or purpose to it. And I think my mom kind of noted that I didn't have a direction or any momentum going towards anywhere. So at one day she just kind of, I think, just kind of flippantly brought up, have you thought about the military? And weirdly, it just kind of clicked, and I said, that's probably a great idea. And it was either that day or the next. It was not long after she said that, I went to a recruiter just to explore it and ended up taking the ASVAB while I was there. It was just a spur of the moment.
And I was changing schools. I was going from Mitchell to a different school. And I got my 1A notice, and I went to Charlotte, got the exam. Didn't think I'd ever get in the Coast Guard. I wanted to be in the Coast Guard, but I didn't know that I'd get in. I got a call that I had been accepted in the U.S. Coast Guard, but it was enlisted. So I went in the U.S. Coast Guard as an enlisted personnel. I said, first of all, go into boot camp in good shape.
You don't really have time to stop and think when you're in boot camp. I mean, it's literally, your whole day is jam-packed full of stuff. Some of it is very tough and boring. Some of it's awesome and fun and super exciting. So.
You have to be, in the military, you got to be strong mentally and physically, have a desire for success.
That was the coolest feeling, because, that's when you've done something that not everybody's done, and that's when you've changed. You know that they leveled you up from where you were. So that was really cool. When you're in school and you're showing the Army you're in school, they just give you monthly checks, and that paid for school, that paid for part of my living. It was a really good deal. School costs a lot more than it did then, but it more than paid for school.
It was a different time. I don't think it would happen now the way it did then. I take that back. If we could get another war like we did in Vietnam, but I hated the newspapers. They would publish, okay, we lost 55 young men in Vietnam today, but we killed 300 Viet Cong. So it was more like a contest, and the lives didn't mean anything. It was about it. And then they would publish in the newspaper who in the area had been killed in Vietnam. There wasn't anything about the guys that got shot up. It wasn't anything about the guys that mentally lost it. I knew 3 people, and they came back. A couple of them shot up. The mental anguish is some ways harder than the physical. And they all died by suicide. I think their names should be on that wall, just like the ones that died in Vietnam. Vietnam caused their deaths. I was coming back from Baltimore, flying from Baltimore back to Charlotte to see my future wife. And I hit the Charlotte airport, and as I was walking through, some girl just walked right up in front of me, and she spit on me and hit me right here. So there was no one in the military at that time that received any respect. The only people you received respect from was your fellow soldiers and the people that you worked with.
His first time, when he signed up for the Army, he had one tour in Iraq, and he was shot by a sniper and got Purple Heart for a wound in one of his thighs, is clean in and out. But when he came home, he healed over, and he made the decision that he was going to continue on. He wasn't done, but he really wanted to have a little bit of independence, and which really fits with who we know as Jason, was somebody that knows whose own identity is and very capable and very steadfast in what he believes in. He came back and decided that he was going to try and become a Green Beret.
My father got out of the military in 1945. He was wounded at the Remagen Bridge. 3 days later, after he got a wound in the right hip, he was in sick bay for 2 days. They took the shrapnel out and sewed his behind up. 2 hours after he got back, the Remagen Bridge fell. It fell with 28 Army engineers. There's a saying, I think it's on the West Virginia Vietnam Memorial, and it goes something like this: for those that served and for those that died, freedom has a meaning no other can understand. It is truly being in the military. That's what you fight for, is that freedom. So God bless the Gold Star families, because it can't be an easy task, and I think so often we don't put them as high up as we should.
It was after his third tour in Afghanistan, so his 4th tour, he had come home and had decided with his wife that he was going to retire from the Army because he had 2 daughters, a 3.5 and a 2.5-year-old, that were growing up without him, and he didn't want that. So he signed up to do some defensive contracting work, still working for the DOD, and was helping to protect one of the U.S. aircraft hangars in Afghanistan when when the enemy dressed up like one of the Afghan allies and came in onto the aircraft base and shot at Jason and his fellow teammates. 2 of his teammates had been shot. And as a medic, he decided to go and protect them and to go after and try to pull them into safety. And in the process, he was shot and killed in that situation.
Their sacrifices were for a good reason. I lost a lot of good friends in Vietnam that died over there, and some that came back and couldn't live with it. And they all died for a good reason. Anytime you're fighting a war to protect the others, your family, and to protect this country and to keep it alive. I'm 76 years old, but if they needed me, I'd go.